Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You have tuned into the Rebel News live stream on this same Monday, June 9th, 2025. I'm David Menzies, and my co-host, well, let me tell you a bit about my co-host, shall I? Folks, do you know that today is National Donald Duck Day? And my co-host was planning to celebrate it, and then she decided against it because, really, who gives a duck? She is the she-devil with a sword. She is the Khaleesi of Northern Alberta. She is the sensational Sheila Gunn Reid. Hey, Sheila, how are you? I hope you're feeling better.
I'm doing about 75% better, I think, than I was when I was gone. Hopefully my voice holds up. I'm got enough medication in me, enough drugs in me for a small South American country, as I told Ezra a couple of days ago. But we're going to get through this. I'm happy to be back. I don't like the fact that my colleagues had to pick up the slack for me last week and cover off the live stream. But it's not like I was having a holiday. I was working. I was in the UK and I was in Regina, so it's not like I just was like, you know what, Tamara, you got her from here. No, I was flat out working and very sick, as you will hear from clips from that time. But I'm not one to take a day off, and today is more of the same. I'm actually surprised that you didn't make a joke about my voice on Donald Duck Day, but
I'm not sure. I'm not sure it resembles Donald Duck, but speaking of cartoon ducks, Sheila, here's the big question. It's kind of like Ginger or Marianne from Gilligan's Island. Donald Duck or Daffy Duck? Who is your preference?
Scrooge. Scrooge McDuck.
No.
Yes. Darkwing Duck. He was more of a crime fighter than the rest of these duck layabouts. What about him?
No.
Oh, I got to take my glass off there. You're giving too much glare.
No, I think Looney Tunes, their characters, especially the early days, way more edgy than Disney was or ever will be. So
that's because passive racism was allowed on TV back then. Of course they were edgy. Hey, we should tell everybody what we're doing here today. I can't go too long because I have an appointment after the live stream today. But we'll tell everybody what we're doing. It looks like a cat or something has been in my studio while I was gone for a week because I'm not framed in properly. Scooch over a little there. We'll tell everybody what we're doing, and we'll tell everybody about a very special event we have coming up in Red Deer after we're done that. But this is, of course, the Rebel News live show. It's a live news and opinion show. We take the news as it happens and give you our hot and spicy takes as they come to us. It's called Rebel Roundup. If you want to get involved, there are a couple ways where we democratize the show, because without you, there's no Rebel News. So if you are watching us on Rumble, we appreciate Rumble and their strong stand for free speech. They never censored Rebel News once. If you want to support us over there, their paid chat is called a Rumble Rant. If it's over the $5 US cutoff, we're obligating ourselves to read it on air. If it's under that, we'll do our very best to get to it. Just no promises. But you chatters who fall under the $5 mark, I do my best to get to your chats. And if you're watching us on the censorship platform of YouTube, of which we are recently remonetized, I remain shocked every time that we can get a super chat over there. It's always a surprise when we remain remonetized over there. But if you want to leave us a super chat, that's their paid chat over there. It helps us cover the cost of doing the work that we do here at Rebel News. Every little bit helps. We'll never take a penny from Mark Carney. But if you're watching the recorded version of the live stream after the fact, this is past Sheila speaking to future viewers. You can leave something called a super thanks. That's their paid comment. If you are moved by the spirit to help us. So there's that. Now, I alluded to the event that's coming up in Red Deer this Saturday. It is Independence Town Hall. It's a full day event. It's like an independence convention / symposium. We'll have people from both sides of the Western independence debate. I don't want to say Alberta independence because if Albertans choose to leave Confederation, do you think Saskatchewanites, Saskies, are going to stay behind? They're definitely not. They're going to look around and say, take us with you. And I think the dominoes are going to fall. But those decisions will be made by the people of those respective provinces and not our Laurentian overlords telling us to sit down and shut up. So if you want tickets, go to donegetingscrewed.com. We actually even have Dallas Brody, MLA from BC, who says, this is obviously a concern in British Columbia, particularly in the interior. They're going to look around and see Alberta and Saskatchewan gone, look at Vancouver, look at Ottawa and say, excuse me, is there room in the minivan for us? We'd like to go on this little trip with you too. So we've got, like I said, we've got people from all sides of the debate. We've got Keith Wilson, you know him as trucker lawyer, but before he was trucker lawyer, he was independence lawyer, and Dallas Brody, as I said, and we're actually adding people all the time. So go to donegetingscrewed.com. The tickets are pretty affordable. I think early bird pricing is still in effect. Can we scroll down and remind me of that? As I said, it was sort of out of commission for a week, but I think they're $45 for a full day event. Correct me if I'm wrong, Efron, Olivia behind the scenes. I don't want to give the wrong pricing, but you can get the details at donegetingscrewed.com. Look at this list of speakers. Ezra, me, I'm sort of the MC of the event. Keith Wilson, David Knight-Legg, he's a Western political analyst, and he's on the stay side. Dallas Brody, independent MLA from BC. Corey Morgan, independence activist and author. Derek Fildebrandt, he's a Western separatist over at the Western Standard. David Parker, we know David Parker from Take Back Alberta. Rachel Parker, his lovely wife and mother of his child. She's an independent journalist. Key and Bexty, our alumnus over at the Counter Signal, and our friends at the Alberta Prosperity Project too are also involved. So get your tickets at donegetingscrewed.com. Dennis Modry, yes, renowned heart surgeon. And someone who is one of the early adopters of no lockdowns, thank you very much, here in Alberta. As someone with medical expertise, he was painted also as a kook. And they're doing the same now with the Western separatism. But anyways, tickets are selling fast. And because the tickets are at an affordable price point for a full day's symposium, they are going to go fast. So that's this Saturday, and go to donegetingscrewed.com right now. Get your tickets right now. There you go. VIP tickets for the special VIP experience. There's a VIP dinner with the speakers and your favorite rebels, and $45 general admission. That's early bird pricing until like tonight. So go right now, not right now, wait till after the live stream, but leave a note for yourself to do it. Get your early bird pricing at $45. Usually we charge $100 for a full day Rebel News Live style event. So that's a great price for what you're getting. And you'll be able to ask questions of the speakers. I'm really looking forward to hearing from Keith Wilson, who has really thought about these issues, people's reservations and apprehensions about separatism, like what do we do about the military? What do we do about the police? What do we do about the pension? What do we do about passports? He's thought about all of that and done the research, and he's a constitutional lawyer, so he is the guy to ask. Anyways, it's at donegetingscrewed.com.
There you go. And I guess, Sheila, my invitation to be a speaker at the event, I suppose I got held up in the ongoing mail dispute right now.
We've heard enough from Easterners. Thank you. That's the whole point of the event.
I would love to come to Red Deer, Alberta, even though there is a very high possibility I might bump into Ron MacLean, and which makes a mockery of your incessant claim, Sheila, that Alberta is a rat-free province. But I'll take one for the team.
He spends most of his time in Toronto anyway.
Sheila, one last note about this. I know we're aiming, I think, for 600 attendees in that room, which is likely doable. There's three options. There is the status quo, Alberta stays in Confederation. There is number 2, separation, or number 3, becoming the 51st state. You know Alberta better than anyone. What do you think the mood in the room was? I mean, it might be interesting. I'm not telling you how to run the event, but if people had to vote 1, 2, or 3, how do you see the majority in Red Deer voting in terms of those three options?
I think there's actually a fourth option in the mix, and that is sort of a sovereignty association kind of deal, wherein we stay within Confederation, but get a better deal. And I don't think that's actually a reasonable thing, because if we were going to get a better deal within Confederation, we shouldn't have to vote to leave to get it. But I think the room would be probably split 50-50.
Wow.
Between joining America and finding our own path forward as an independent and sovereign nation.
Wow, so the status quo isn't even on the table, you're saying?
Oh, I severely doubt it. I mean, I think
Incredible.
The latest polling data, I mean, it just keeps going up and up and up. The more Mark Carney talks, the more independence keeps going up. Like, it was at like 1/3, and now it's closer to over 4 in 10, closer to 5 in 10, so 50% of Albertans. And that's without Trump coming on strong to us. Like, I think Trump's overtures to Albertans will begin post the G7 in Kananaskis, because he's going to go to Kananaskis and say, holy moly, look at this place. This is one of the most beautiful places on the face of the earth. They've got all the food. They grow all the food. They've got all the oil and gas. Between us, Saskatchewan, and the interior of British Columbia, we got all the mining. He's going to say, and yet Ottawa is pushing them out the door. Come into my loving bosom, is what he's going to say. Once he sees how beautiful it is, he's not going to understand why people treat us so poorly.
Hey, works for me, Sheila, somewhere in Alberta being the new home of a Trump resort and casino and golf course, of course.
Trump Tower, Kananaskis.
By the way, Sheila, you mentioned Mark Carney, and as the saying goes, speak of the devil and he shall appear. Well, not appear, but at least we have our first news item. Canada will achieve NATO's 2% target this year, half a decade ahead of schedule. In an increasingly dangerous world, we will be ready to protect our people, our sovereignty, and our allies. Sheila, I'll give you my take on this, and then I want to hear what you have to say, and I'd love to hear what our audience has to say via a super chat. First of all, this business about half a decade ahead of schedule, that's really rich. Canada, I understand, is the biggest laggard of all the NATO members when it comes to funding. Basically, you're going to own up to what your obligations are instead of that ludicrous blackface target of 2030. I mean, why not 2040, 2050? Secondly, Sheila, what does this cost? The Carney Liberals are saying this means an added $9 billion. Is anyone buying that? I can't see going to 2% being just a $9 billion upreach. I think it's going to be much higher. Secondly, there's no mention, and maybe this is a separate line item, or maybe it isn't. You know, who knows when you're dealing with Mark Carney. What about the Golden Dome commitments? Remember, President Trump wants us to be a partner and a financial partner in funding the Golden Dome, and certainly he needs a functional Golden Dome to include Canada. So what does that cost, and what are the deadlines for that? And secondly, even if we're going to achieve that 2% target this year, how do we do it, Sheila? Right now, we know recruitment is in the dumpster with the Canadian forces. I don't know, maybe it's the idea of fighting men really don't want to join up with an organization that is dispensing tampons in the men's room. And also in terms of the equipment, I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we have that capability of manufacturing armored personnel carriers, tanks, you know, to the requirement of meeting that 2%. Maybe that has to be outsourced. I'm not sure. So I think this statement brings about more questions than it does clarity. What say you?
Yeah, I mean, I think his solution is just going to be to shovel money at NATO, instead of fixing all the structural issues. Yeah. And like, does he want a pat on the back? What he's doing is saying, we haven't paid our credit card for years and years and years, but this month we're going to pay the minimum balance a day early. Like, congratulations. Like to say, oh, we're going to meet our 2% spending target ahead of schedule. Ahead of what schedule? You're late. You're years late on it. You should have been paying this years and years and years ago. We're not pulling our weight. And that's one of the reasons the Americans are constantly mad about us, at us on this issue.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And of course, where would the money come from if we needed extra money? Well, it would be coming from your home province, Sheila. It would be oil and natural gas in a pipeline going to British Columbia, which the Carney Liberals say, we have no problem with that. Oh, look at the asterisk. Check the fine print. Once again, devil in the details. Unless the premier of such and such a province is against it, and we know the NDP premier of British Columbia is dead set against pipelines going into its province. So Carney's very sneaky in a Patrick Brown kind of way. He's making the premier to be the heavy because, he's basically saying, well, if it wasn't for him, we'd green light it. But
yeah. He's offloading the voices of no to somebody else so that he doesn't have to wear it around his neck like a political millstone, as if Canadians are that stupid. He is the prime minister of the Confederation. If we're just going to let all the little Balkan states of Canada decide what happens for all the other little Balkan states of Canada, what exactly does he do around here? He could just, why do we need him?
Incredible. And to carry on the Carney theme, I see we do have a video clip. It's Prime Minister Carney drawing a link between defending the territorial integrity, his words, of Ukraine, Gaza, and the Canadian Arctic? What?
No. My God. I haven't seen this. This is next level stupid, I'm sure.
Check it out.
I'm coming in hot. Let's watch.
When we stand up for territorial integrity, whether it's in Ukraine or West Bank and Gaza, we are also standing up for the territorial integrity of the Canadian Arctic. 10 years ago, Canada's defense spending fell to less than 1% of GDP. It has since doubled in cash terms, but it's still not close enough to face these mounting risks. The brave women and men who are protecting our sovereignty do not have the resources they need for a riskier world. Our military infrastructure and equipment have aged, hindering our military preparedness. I'll give an example or two. Only one of our 4 submarines is seaworthy. Less than half our maritime fleet and land vehicles are operational. More broadly, we're too reliant on the United States. And so for all those reasons, I'm announcing today that Canada will achieve NATO's 2% of GDP target this year, half a decade ahead of schedule. And we will further accelerate our investments in years to come, consistent with meeting these new security imperatives. We'll start by changing the way we support and invest in our armed forces. We will change the way we arm the men and women who serve, so we can fight on new battlegrounds in unfamiliar territory, so we can defend every inch of our sovereign territory, from seafloor to the Arctic to cyberspace. So we can protect Canadians, our interests, and our allies. Canada's new government will rebuild, reinvest, and rearm the Canadian armed forces with a strategy that rests on 4 pillars. Investing in the foundations of defense, the women and men who serve, and the equipment and infrastructure that they use. Second, we will enhance and expand our military capabilities. Third, we'll strengthen Canada's defense industry. And we will diversify Canada's defense partnerships. I call on all parties in Parliament to support these critical investments in our security and sovereignty. Our plan will help ensure that Canada is strong at home and reliable abroad. We will ensure that every dollar is invested wisely, including by prioritizing made-in-Canada manufacturing and supply chains. We should no longer send 3/4 of our defense capital spending to America.
Well, Sheila, I don't know where to begin. First of all, in terms of spending every dollar wisely and a made-in-Canada defense, solution, I think, is Carney hinting at all those white elephant EV battery plants that we've invested billions into? Are they going to be converted into making all-terrain military vehicles and tanks and whatnot? I mean, at least, unlike your solution, Sheila, of turning them into casinos, I mean, something productive would be happening. But I want to just focus on the Prime Minister in his own words. Half of military vehicles
I wrote that down. Over half are inoperable.
Yeah. And he said something, I think, words to the effect of, we're dependent on the United States, I'm assuming, for parts to make them operable. Then the most scathing thing, 1 out of our 4 submarines is operational. It reminds me of the great Thomas Dolby song, One of Our Submarines is Missing. The Canadian version is one of our submarines is actually working. Right. The rest of the fleet is in dry dock. Those aren't those used submarines we bought from England decades ago.
But they were selling for scrap. We did the same thing with the CF-18s.
And the thing is, and the connection, Sheila, I'm getting to, if you're talking about Arctic sovereignty, what do you need? You need icebreakers and you need submarines. Right. So we are incapable of enforcing our own boundaries, thoroughly, by the Prime Minister's own words. But the biggest horrible thing about this indictment of incompetence, who was in charge the last decade?
That was what I wrote down.
Advisor to blackface.
That's what I wrote down. I'm like, I hope Mark Carney finds out who is responsible for this mess over the last 10 years. Our new Liberal government? You mean the same one that oversaw this?
Exactly.
Didn't do a damn thing about it? That was the only point that I had to make, was the place is decrepit. He listed how decrepit the Canadian military is, but sort of skates around the fact that it was his Liberals who did it. Yeah. Plus all the same people involved. Like Anita Anand, all the same people are completely involved in it. Did you notice he shoehorned the West Bank and Gaza into the same issue of territorial sovereignty? You mean Judea and Samaria?
You won't get those words out of him.
No. As if the Israelis defending themselves against the terrorists who launched the Israeli version of 9/11 on them is somehow an issue of Israel not respecting the territorial sovereignty of Gaza. Israel withdrew from Gaza. They even dug up their dead. Okay. Hamas has been in charge. Israel is launching a defensive war against Hamas there. And I guess Greta Thunberg by extension, but we'll get to that in a minute. What a terrible, terrible prime minister we have. Anyway.
And if anyone's saying, well, give him a chance, he's been behind the scenes for at least 5 years as the economic advisor to Justin Trudeau in this government. This is the same old with a fresh coat of paint on the leader. And even that's not true because, like I said, he has been connected for the last 5 years. Unbelievable. And you know what, Sheila? It's too bad the independent media isn't there because maybe somebody did ask this question in the mainstream media, although I don't know of it where I stand now. Why couldn't someone say, well, Mr. Carney, isn't this a scathing indictment of the incompetence of the last 10 years of the Justin Trudeau Liberals?
Including members of your current cabinet.
Yes.
Like Anita Anand. If you failed the military in procurement, perhaps you should not be in the current cabinet. But this is the Liberals, so you at least fail laterally, if not upward. Yep. Olivia advises me that we can skip this next clip because we do need to hit an ad break, and I have to both blow my nose and cough, and I don't think anybody wants that. So we'll hit an ad break. We'll be right back.
Hey, what do you think about Alberta independence? What do you think about Alberta trying to get a better deal within Canada. Do you think Alberta should have the right to vote in a referendum to separate the same way Quebec did? There's a lot of things to talk about. Can Canada be fixed, or has the West tried that, done that, been there, and it's just not working? Well, we're going to talk about all these things in an amazing day-long conference in Red Deer, the heart of Alberta, on Saturday, June 14th. Go to donegetingscrewed.com to get your tickets now. It's going to be a full day. We'll start with a continental breakfast. We'll have panel discussions. We'll have keynote speakers. We'll even have a debate. I think that's going to be the highlight of it. David Legg, former advisor to the Alberta government, is going to make the case for Canada. Keith Wilson, lawyer, freedom activist, he was with the Freedom Convoy. He'll be making the case for independence. We'll have other people in the debates, a media panel, and people of different points of view, including different political parties. There's going to be a bit of a trade show there too. So we'll serve you 2 meals, but more than that, we'll serve you ideas you just can't get anywhere else. But it's coming up quick, and I promise you this event will sell out. There's only room for 1,000 people. And I know that there have been 1,000-person meetings about this subject all over the province. In fact, we had an event in Calgary that sold out in 2 days when we had only 350 seats. So don't be disappointed. Go to donegetingscrewed.com and get your tickets now. I'll be there. Sheila Gunn-Reid will be there. So many interesting people. Our friends in other media companies like Western Standard, Juno News, and Countersignal. It's going to be a great day. That's Saturday, June 14th in Red Deer, Alberta, all day long. Go to donegetingscrewed.com to get your ticket now. Don't wait. I don't want you to be locked out. It's going to be full. See you there. That's donegetingscrewed.com.
All right.
Don't you dare miss it, as the late, great Billy Red Lyons used to say when he was cutting wrestling promos.
Yeah, we had over 500 people show up in Regina. So this will be a busy and hectic event. And we've got sort of a little bit of a trade show, I believe, coalescing as we speak at the event too. People who want to vend their goods to like-minded people. And so anyways, don't miss it, as David Menzies said. Okay, let's go into what the Canadian government is doing with our money. We've got this exclusive from Juno News. The Canada Summer Jobs Program funds Islamist and left-wing organizations. ESDC, that's Employment and Social Development Canada, is subsidizing dozens of wages for employees working at far left and controversial Islamic organizations through the Canada Summer Jobs Program. This comes to us by way of Noah Jarvis. And we know for sure that the Liberals have previously used this as sort of an ideological tract. What they have done is they fund Islamic organizations, student groups, while cutting Christian groups, Christian charities off from the funding. They tried to make, and they did for a time, make Christian groups who, for example, provided camps, like summer camps to inner city kids. These are run by churches, sign an attestation to the Liberal Party's values around gender ideology and women's reproductive rights, which just means abortion. It has nothing to do with reproductive rights. And so this is what the Canadian government is doing with your money. Not only are they funding the left-wing organizations known as the mainstream media, now they're using it to provide summer jobs to your local left-wing protester slash barista slash arts student.
And of course, Sheila, the question is why? What is the unspoken motivation for this? And I think it is the Liberals have done the math. We've discussed this before. There are 5 times as many Muslims as Jews in Canada, for example. So taking a pro-Islamist stance, they think, is political capital in their favor. And by the way, I want to preface that by saying not all Muslims are on board with this, of course.
No.
We see at the pro-Israel rallies, members of the Persian community who are Muslim marching with...
You know who, by the way, if you look online, some of the biggest critics of this Gaza nonsense, including the selfie flotilla, are Emiratis. Like members of the UAE government who are saying this is absolutely mental.
And I want to say this too, Sheila, because over the weekend, Lincoln Jay and I were in Colorado. We went to Boulder, the site of that attempted massacre, Mohammed Sabri Solomon throwing Molotov cocktails, and it sounds crazy, a homemade flamethrower. He victimized 15 people and a dog. Everyone's going to survive, thank God. But here is the question, whether it's the Democrats in the U.S. or the Liberals in Canada. If you are Jewish, if you are a supporter of the Jewish state, why do you vote Democrat? We know from exit polls in the last presidential election, as high as 78% of American Jews voted for Kamala Harris. Colorado itself, Sheila, used to be a swing state. Since 2008, it's been a blue state.
Yeah.
And it is madness. Same as if you're a Canadian Jew and you're voting for the Justin Trudeau, Mark Carney Liberals, well, they're not your friends. They're your enemies. And I don't know what the Canadian numbers are. I don't know if that's being tracked.
I think it's changing, though. I think it is changing, and I think it's changing even as we speak. This sort of stuff does change votes.
Yep.
Look at Roman Baber, who snatched riding from one of Ezra's favorite MPs. And so, like, things are changing, I think, in those communities where they see, like, look, the Liberals are not doing anything for us. We're also seeing it sort of change in the Indigenous community where, there's sort of this shift towards the Conservative Party as they continue to be failed by the Liberals, and their sort of open borders will fund these reliable activists sort of ideas.
Well, this is exactly what I'm getting at, especially in the U.S., Sheila, where you see under the Biden administration, it was open borders. We had millions, some say 8 million, some say 21 million, of illegal aliens coming into the country, many of them with prior criminal records. This Mr. Solomon in Boulder, Colorado, a week ago Sunday, he was in the U.S. illegally. He had overstayed his visa. And you also had the Biden administration not enforcing the sanctions on Iran, allowing that regime to become flush with money and doing what with it? Not building community centers, funding Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and other terrorist organizations who are committed to destroying the little Satan, that's Israel, and the big Satan, the United States. In other words, the sugar daddy that's allowing them to make billions, untold billions in oil sales. Sheila, this is madness. If you
it
are
won't hold forever. It won't hold forever.
Yeah.
Look what happened in the Texas border counties. They flipped Republican. So these, what the Democrats thought were reliable Latino voters, and they called them Latinx. I don't know how you say it. They made up this stupid name thinking, oh, this will appeal to Latino voters. While the people who lived in the border counties all voted Republican red, including Starr County, which had not voted for a Republican for president since 1896. So the Democrats will proceed with this nonsense at their own peril, because it's hitting the fulcrum and it's coming down the other side, and it's going to crash land on the Democrats, and it couldn't happen to a nicer bunch.
Sheila, it's so funny you mention Latinx, because I don't know a Latino or a Latina. I have never met one that has used that term. They scoff at it. They think it's funny.
Yeah.
And I swear to you, Sheila, the first time I saw that in print, Latinx, I thought this was a spin-off of Marvel's X-Men comics. I thought it was going to be an all-Latino mutant team of superheroes. That's how crazy it is.
It's white colonization of the language, right? Like, the language is gendered. Latino. They thought, let's take the gender out of the language and call it Latinx. And thankfully, the Latinos and Hispanics were like, no. Imagine thinking that would appeal to someone's abuela, their granny. Forget it. We should keep going, because on the topic of importing anti-Semitism, the National Holocaust Monument in Ottawa has been vandalized.
Oh, what took them so long? That's what I say.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What does it say? Feed me?
You're trying to try to get me to make sense of madness. I have no idea. But you know what? And this kind of ties in with our next story because Greta Thunberg is en route in a flotilla.
No, she's not en route.
Well, not right now.
They snatched her up. Do we have my written piece on this from this morning?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, I called it Greta's freedom flop. The Israeli foreign ministry has been calling it the selfie yacht that she's on. Anyways, the Israeli Navy, the very elite division of the Israeli Navy, snatched them up, served them sandwiches. She's going to be upset because it wasn't vegan. And like I said, a reality check. Because when your humanitarian mission involves a PR team, zero communication with any aid agencies on the ground, and more photographers than food, you're not helping, you're performing. And now they grabbed her. And she's saying, we've been kidnapped. No, Greta, revolting that you used that word, considering there are still Israeli hostages who were kidnapped by Hamas, held in terror tunnels, being subjected to subterranean horrors, which we can't even imagine. And you know what the IDF is doing to her right now? Making her watch the documentary on October 7th that was captured with the body cam footage from the Hamas terrorists, so that she knows what she got on their little selfie yacht to defend. Look at her.
Wow, and look at that. I mean, I wonder what the complaints of the so-called kidnapped captives are going to be, Sheila. You know, my sub didn't have extra cheese like I ordered
No,
it.
they don't want cheese. They were vegan cheese. She's vegan, as Kian Bexley and I discovered from the cans of beans in her car. Her borrowed Arnold Schwarzenegger Tesla when she was in Edmonton. She's a vegan, so she's like, do you have a vegan option?
And please tell me they didn't.
I hope they didn't. But yeah, like apparently their yacht has little to no food on it. It was complete stunt. This is it. Yeah. Good morning to all of our followers. In case you missed it, the selfie yacht is safely making its way to the shores of Israel. The passengers are safe and were provided with sandwiches and water and are expected to return to their own countries. The tiny amount of food aid that wasn't consumed by the celebrities will be transferred. They were just munching their way across the ocean. Transferred to Gaza through real humanitarian channels. More than 1,200 aid trucks have entered Gaza from Israel within the past 2 weeks. Close to 11 million meals were transferred directly to civilians in Gaza. There are ways to deliver aid to the Gaza Strip. They do not involve provocations and selfies. And then, yeah, they're going to be shown the documentary, and I hope they learn something.
Yeah, and hopefully it won't involve Hamas in terms of the food distribution, Sheila, because as we all know, they intercept the food shipments and then sell it for profit on the black market to fund their little war machine. By the way, do we have a video of Greta Thunberg? And or maybe am I skipping ahead, Sheila? Is that the cringe video of the day?
Wait, no, we'll go to that in a second. Okay. Salma Zahid, you'll remember her as the member of parliament for Scarborough Centre, Don Valley East. She says the Gaza Freedom Flotilla ship, it's a yacht, is a humanitarian mission and must be allowed safe passage to Gaza. As the Israeli government said, there's almost no food on there, that they hadn't munched their way across the Mediterranean eating. I'm concerned about Israeli government statements regarding blocking or intercepting this peaceful mission. I urge Canada to speak up for the ship and be allowed safe passage. And then Honest Reporting says, the only thing that was humanitarian was the manner in which the interdicting IDF forces treated these radical activists by giving them sandwiches and water.
Yeah, and by the way, blocking food aid.
You're just not allowed to enter another country on a ship and just be like, we're here. You can't do that.
Yeah, but surely she's confused. Is she, again, what my previous point, Sheila, is she talking about Hamas? They're the ones that are the biggest contributors to the humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
They're the ones snatching the food aid.
Exactly.
They're the ones snatching the food aid. The Israelis are trying to deliver it directly to the civilians. The problem is Hamas is intercepting it and saying, you got to give us the food aid. And then they just keep it. And it's causing riots in Gaza, but nobody wants to talk about that either.
Wasn't this tried before sometime, Sheila? I'm having deja vu, this whole
Flotilla nonsense?
flotilla.
Every time something pops off in Gaza, some white liberal anti-Semite celebrities are like, let's get on a yacht and save some people. Meanwhile, tripping over the homeless people in their own country to
And
do
how
it.
did that work out the previous times?
They always get arrested.
Yeah.
Always. It's almost like that's the goal, to be able to film a selfie video where you say, we have been intercepted and kidnapped.
You know, and there's Greta, and I don't know, Sheila, not that it's important, but she kind of looks different to me, and I don't mean by the keffiyeh scarf she's sporting, but it looks like those, the innocence has worn off. The bloom is off this rose. Or is this maybe the result of a vegan diet? She doesn't look very healthy.
She was raised a vegan. She has cut off her thinning hair. Her hairline is drastically receding. She doesn't have DHA and B12 in her diet, which means her brain doesn't work properly. She cannot properly reason. Kids who are raised on a vegan diet have neurological problems that last forever. And so this is just the result of it. And she's just an aging child actor. And instead of transitioning into successful directing like Ron Howard, this is the path she's chosen. And now she's, I don't know, getting free sandwiches from the Israelis.
But you know what, Sheila? In all honesty, I have sympathy in my heart for Greta Thunberg because she has been used as a puppet by her parents.
Sure,
and by
but
these
she's an adult now.
Yep, I know. But going back to when she came on the scene, and I think at one point she was Time Magazine's Person of the Year, which is just maybe tells you why Time Magazine is maybe 10 minutes away from going out of business. But she was a useful idiot. She was a pawn. She was a child being manipulated. And shame on the adults behind the scene using a child to carry out their political agenda.
Yeah, I mean, and her mom has said that Greta Thunberg has autism,
Well, that makes it worse.
obsessive compulsive disorder, which
Yeah.
probably, you know, when you tell a child to worry about food from their earliest days and stress them out about climate change, it'll sort of attach itself to that OCD. And she's got selective mutism, although she won't shut up at all these days. So, you know, she's 22 years old. She has not graduated high school. At 22 years old, I had a child already. I was a fully functioning adult living in the world. And she is making selfie videos wearing a keffiyeh saying that the Israelis have kidnapped her while she's munching on a vegetable sandwich.
Sheila, is that a thing? Selective mutism? I mean,
I
either
wi-
you're
it is,
mute
but
or
I
you're
wish.
not, right?
Do you know what? Kids who have experienced trauma do undergo selective mutism. So again, maybe I'm right, or maybe you're right to have more pity on her than I do.
I mean, it kind of sounds like when I get home and Lady Menzoid says, "Did you remember to pick up the milk?" And I'm
Yeah, maybe
selective
I'm sure
mutism.
sure she prays for that every day, just a little bit. What's the next thing we need to do? Do we need to hit an ad break?
An ad break, guys? I think super producer Olivia said we don't have to. So,
Okay.
no, that's not bad. Let's see. I'm just looking at. Oh, here yesterday, Sheila. I didn't realize this. It was a special day.
Yeah,
I'm
not a
surprised it
holiday,
came so
though.
soon. June 8th was Tax Freedom Day. That's the day when
Right.
Canadians start working for themselves. This day moving on, I suppose.
Right. So you get 3 weeks where you can bank your money because I just saw some numbers today that say Canadians spend 52% of their income, their after-tax income, on housing, which means that for the first 6 months of the year, you work for the government. And then the next 6 months of the year, you work to pay for your house. And then you have about 2 weeks in the middle where you could probably get a haircut and maybe your nails done. Great. Yeah.
Well, It's a scathing indictment, I think, of how overtaxed we are here in
terrible.
Canada, Sheila. And I'm not kidding. I thought Tax Freedom Day was closer to Dominion Day, July 1st. So this is very interesting. Maybe I wasn't paying the proper attention.
I'm sure it has something to do with the carbon tax being set at 0 this year, which would have resulted in that. But I wonder if they factored the tariffs into there, because as you know, coffee is being absolutely hit with the tariffs. If you had to buy coffee lately, it's crazy. And it looks like Loblaws is in some kind of dispute with Folgers or
That's right,
whatever. But yeah, coffee is just skyrocketing because of the tariffs. And it's like, look, when you need to highly caffeinate yourself so you can work all those extra hours so that the government can give themselves a raise, now you can't even afford that.
You know, that's a little rich, isn't it? Loblaws having a dispute with one of its suppliers over wholesale price, Sheila. This is the same Loblaws, I think, just a week ago, and we got to look into it here in Ontario, but a Quebec man, and I don't think he's a one-off. I guess it's just somebody that scrutinized his bill. You know, I've always ranted, and I think I speak for millions of Canadians, how we hate the shakedown at the cashier.
Yeah.
Would you like to donate X for this particular charity? And because, you know, especially since if there's other people in line, you don't want to look like a cheapskate, but it's very resentful. But Loblaws, a Quebec man found on his bill, took an involuntary charitable deduction away from him. It was a minor amount. I think it was like 64 cents, but still the chutzpah, Sheila, in saying, you know what, well, we think we're supporting a really good cause, and even if you say no, we're still taking money. So I find it kind of rich that Loblaws is, you know, perching itself on the moral high ground.
Canada's richest family taking money from struggling Canadians, the Westons, Galen Weston. Remember when he had us pay for his refrigerator upgrades to a more climate-friendly refrigerator in the Loblaws stores? And look, I'll be the first to tell you, I shop at Superstore. They're affordable in a time of inflation. But I've absolutely had it with the Weston family.
Yeah. Oh, I think that was like, I think 13 million. But in defense of Loblaws, if the government is going to put a program out there for you to take advantage, it would almost be a dereliction of duty. My biggest beef with the Weston people, Sheila, is they were part of that collusion to fix bread prices. Right. Remember that?
Yeah. And then they said, oh, we ripped you off for 10 years. Here's your $20 gift card. Go away.
I think it was $25. I think I still have it. It's going to expire soon. By the way, Sheila, I take great umbrage to that being the compensation, because if a retailer gives you a gift card for $25, that's not really $25, right?
It's about half of that.
Exactly, because of their markup. So why weren't Canadians given cash money? And, well, that might be a threatened species right now. I know Ezra's got a campaign about what Mark Carney going after cash on the barrel. You should check that out, folks. But I thought that was almost a favor for Loblaws for itself to give compensation, which you have to go back to Loblaws and spend in the store. I think that was me back in the day with, there we are.
Yeah, it was you.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, the gall of these people, because there are people who would fundamentally not shop there again after they ripped you off.
Yeah.
But then they force you to remain a customer.
That used to be, that particular Loblaws at Church and Carleton, that used to be Maple Leaf Gardens. So the factory of misery continues there.
Oh, goodness. We should cover this thing because it's in the YouTube title. Nearly half of conservative voters excuse me, I can't even read, but I took my glasses off because they were reflecting. Nearly half of conservative voters back Alberta separatism, MPs warn. And this was conservative MPs from Alberta, including David Bexty, who just had that incredible flagship speech in the House of Commons, but also, as you can, let me go. Yeah, they talk about David Bexty's flagship speech. But a Leger poll revealed a significant portion of conservative voters, resonate with Alberta's independence aspirations. 77% expressing understanding. 43% of these voters indicated support for Alberta's secession from Alberta, and that's why they're being treated fairly by the Conservatives. They're not being told to shut up. About half of Albertans support an independence referendum, 36% favoring separation. In fact, it's a newer poll from the end of May suggests it's much higher than that. And so, I don't think it's going to get any better. In fact, the more the Liberals say these Quebecers get a say in whether or not you get to sell your natural resources, the worse this is going to get.
100%, Sheila. And I think the cautionary tale in those numbers, if there's anyone in central Canada that thinks Alberta separatism is a gimmick,
No.
think again. I think it's
We don't
very,
need you.
very real. More
Yeah, we
real than what existed in Quebec in their two referendums of 1980 and 1995. I really believe that, Sheila.
Here's the question that I heard Corey Morgan ask, and it was left a lot of people sort of like, oh, I never thought of it that way. If you were allowed to make the choice today and not in 1905, would you vote to join Canada?
Oh,
And
in
a
other
lot of
words, if you had a crystal ball telling you how your resource development was going to go, more than a century later, is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, basically, if you were at a territory right now and not part of Confederation, would you choose to join it? And everyone said, like, I don't, like, the people in the crowd, you could see them go like, oh. And it's true. Like, there are a lot of people who are sentimental Canadians, but if you said, what's the reason to stay that isn't sentimentality? There's not a lot of answers to that.
And also, Sheila, if it was a matter going back to 1905, choosing between two suitors, and you knew how the future was going to turn out for you in terms of resource development in the next century, I think there's no question Albertans would rather join the United States. And certainly they'd be welcome there. There is a feeling, I don't know how vibrant it was in 1905, the whole idea of manifest destiny, of expanding the United States. So I agree. If you had that proverbial crystal ball and you saw how things turned out, why would you want to remain in Canadian Confederation in the first place?
Well, there's a lot of people who are saying, when you look at why there are two separate provinces, Alberta and Saskatchewan,
Yes.
when we are so culturally similar, you can tell there are differences between Albertans and British Columbians, particularly as you get closer to the ocean.
Yes.
But when you, look at us, I mean, we are just arbitrarily separated because at the last minute, somebody in Ottawa said, oh, that's a large landmass, and if we divide them up, they won't be powerful one day. And that is before they knew that we were the breadbasket, that we had all the mining, that we had all the oil and gas, and I suggest all the beautiful places. You just look at what they did to us from the very beginning. From the very beginning, they separated us as fraternal twins and tried to have us raised in different families, and it just didn't work. It never works. So anyway, I'll be quiet. Let's move on to the next thing. I'll let you pick what's left.
How about this? This is something near and dear to our hearts here at Rebel News, Sheila. Tech shy, not guilty.
Oh, yes.
The Amish beat a $38,000 fine via the ArriveCan fines. This is fantastic news.
Right.
Another tip of the hat to the great people at the Democracy Fund, our arm's length charity, because it's funny, Sheila. Do you see any coverage of this in the mainstream media? This perversity to begin with of finding the Amish for not having ArriveCan on their cell phones when We're talking about people who shun technology. They don't even have landlines. Maybe that's why they didn't download the app. I mean, it's like a Monty Python sketch.
They don't have rubber on their tires. My mom is from Ontario. And so her family farm, which we went back to every single year in Mount Forest, Ontario, it was right next to like the Amish are right there. And so she grew up close to the Amish. I am familiar with the Amish. I mean, they had hitching posts behind the Safeway in Mount Forest. And so like anybody can see with their eyes, these people don't have rubber on their tires because that's too much technology. The idea that these people who need someone to drive them to the doctors because they don't have technology, that they would somehow download the ArriveCan app upon entry into Canada, the idea that this proceeded as far as it did is insane. But thankfully, the Democracy Fund, thanks to everybody's generous donations to the Democracy Fund, was able to get $38,000 in fines waived. They were crossing back and forth at Niagara Falls, and so they're closely linked to Amish communities like in Pennsylvania. And, you know, like a lot of times they're the same family going back and forth. And yeah, they didn't have a cell phone. Nobody was smart enough anywhere along the way to say, how do we even issue them a $5,600 fine for this kind of thing? And then they put liens on their farms. They only found out about the liens on their farms. I'm sure the government emailed them, but they only found out about the liens on their farms when they went to finance farm equipment, cattle, whatever. That's the only time they found out about it. And by then, I mean, they've got fees, their credit has been mangled. This has just been absolutely devastating to these people, all because of the ArriveCan app, which was an absolute boondoggle mess itself from the beginning. It sent 10,000 people to quarantine erroneously.
Yeah. Can you imagine? Think of how insidious that is, Sheila. I'm glad you brought up the liens to their farm because Sheila's right, folks. The way they found out, they would go in at like planting season to get a loan from the bank to get the necessary seed or fertilizer equipment, etc. And the banker would come back to these Amish folk and say, you know, Mr. So-and-so, I'm dreadfully sorry, but there's a lien on your property. A lien from... By whom? Oh, the federal government, the government of Canada. This is reminiscent, Sheila, of what the government did to donors to the Freedom Convoy back in 2022. We're going to freeze your bank account. The overreach is so outrageous. And finally, the cherry on this sordid sundae is this. ArriveCan did not work. It didn't work. It was a dead dog with fleas, right?
Not only did it not work, it cost $60+ million. The guy who, one of the two guys in their little shell company that developed this thing, they've just been banned from government contracts for 7 years.
Not good enough.
They should be in jail.
Exactly.
Actually, they should be in jail, not just banned for 7 years. And it didn't work. It was recreated over a weekend by people in the private sector for, I think, like a tenth of the cost. Not even. I think it was like $50,000, $48,000, something like that. And the thing sent 10,000 people erroneously to quarantine, or they would face $56,000 or $5,600 in fines. And this is $5,000 plus fees and the government victim surcharge or whatever it is. But yeah, the thing never worked. Anybody facing any of these fines should have their money given back and everything wiped clean. The thing didn't work. It was a scam from the beginning.
And you know, the perverse irony here, Sheila, is that going back more than 2 centuries, it was the Amish fleeing religious persecution in Europe that made them come to Ontario before it was even known as Ontario, before there was a Canada. They were coming here for freedom. Imagine what they think today when you go into a bank and you find out the government is now basically the owner of your property. Unbelievable.
And like Esther said, we had difficulty convincing them even to fight back because they're pacifist by nature. They're
Exactly.
Anabaptist pacifists. And so they don't fight in wars. They don't even vote. And so they were just ready to sort of turn the other cheek. And it took a lot to convince them to fight this injustice against them. So this is the government just taking advantage of the most vulnerable and kind
100%.
people amongst us.
Yeah,
But
they
that
mean
is
no harm to anyone, Sheila.
nothing. Nothing. I mean, and they're sort of cloistered by nature, right? So even if they quite literally quarantine to themselves all the time, right? So to think that they would spread COVID amongst everybody else, they have their own churches, they have their own schools, they help each other with their own farming. Like they are sort of cloistered by nature, so they were never a threat to any of us. But that is the government, I guess.
Yeah, such as it is. Sheila, I think we're out of time. I know you have a busy afternoon lined up. Do we have our cringe video of the day, or did we already cover that with that footage of Greta Thunberg on the Freedom Flotilla?
What is the cringe of the day? I saw that Dave suggested one, but I don't know. Oh, yes, it is. Oh, Olivia suggested it. The Minister of Safety announcing Mark Carney's death. Let's do that one, please. Here it is. Gary Anandasangari. It's a fun name to say, not a very fun guy, is the chief gun grabber in the country who absolutely knows nothing about guns.
Yep.
As our friend Andrew Lawton revealed last week. I was traveling, and so I didn't get to take the victory lap around Gary Anandasangari's stupidity. But anyway, while I missed that stupidity, I feel like Gary Anandasangari is going to be a well I drink from a lot when I need to see the daily cringe. So let's watch.
I also express my deepest condolences to the late Mark Carney, and as someone, Mark Garneau. I also express
Mark Garneau, former astronaut turned space cadet in the Liberal Party, he passed away. And so Gary Anandasangari stood up and offered his condolences to the current Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney. This guy's considered a front bench cabinet minister.
Well, Sheila, in defense to Gary, all these marks, you can't tell them apart, can you? So Garneau, Carney, it's kind of like Daffy Duck, Donald Duck.
It's so, I thought Seamus O'Regan was one of the stupidest people in
he was the benchmark. Yeah.
He was so but now we've got Gary Anandasangari, who's like, they've committed, I think, $250 million to the gun grab this year, which should go directly to public safety and border security if you really want to worry about crime. But no, it's coming to snatch 410s from people's 10-year-olds. $250 million. This guy's going to oversee $250 million spent on a gun grab. He doesn't know what the PAL system is, or the RPAL. And he doesn't know who died and who's the prime minister. He might be dumber than Seamus O'Regan. It's early times. I'm going to have to start a leaderboard on my whiteboard here. But yeah, this is not a very smart man.
I like how you're thinking. And by the way, just one final thought about Gary, whose surname I have enormous difficulty pronouncing.
Anandasangari. It's fun to say. So
I don't know
look
how
forward
you
to
do
some
it, Sheila.
stupid things.
But the point I was going to make is that he was formerly the Minister of Indigenous Affairs. I can tell you, that is maybe one of the most complicated, complex files.
And the man is a sack of hammers.
What could go wrong?
Yeah. That's why everything is bad on a reserve.
Yep.
The houses are falling apart. The chiefs are corrupt. You have no clean water. It's because the man who thinks Mark Carney just died was the minister, and now he's in charge of public safety. What could possibly go wrong?
And by the way, in the bigger picture, Sheila, this has always been a complaint when it comes to cabinet shuffling. Sometimes there's valid reasons to do it, sometimes there isn't. But I've always been of the opinion that because of the complexity of the Indigenous Affairs file, what is the point in having someone become the minister there? The first year or two is a complete learning curve. And by the time he or she is up to snuff, oh, we're taking you out and putting another rookie in. That's insane, Sheila.
You know what, though? I mean, it's shuffling deck chairs. They don't have a lot of depth on the bench over there. I mean, the country is in a financial spiral of the drain, of the toilet bowl, right? And the guy who precipitated it was elected leader and now the prime minister. So, like, Mark Carney is quite literally the best that they can do. So,
Elbows up, folks.
Elbows up. Oh, my God. I hope to God you guys talked about that cringe dance from the cops doing the elbows up dance. Was that what they were doing last week? Holy
No,
cow.
I think that was some kind of trans drag queen pride dance. Was that the York Region Police?
Yeah. Was that a pride dance? I thought it was an elbows up dance.
Something was up. I dare not say what, but
And they make fun of Westerners in our line dancing. But my God, what was that? I just wanted to crawl out of my skin. Somebody showed that to me at the protest outside of the Tommy Robinson thing. And I was like, I know. We didn't vote for that.
Sheila, before we sign off, any super chats?
We've got two chats. Pardon me for coughing in everybody's ear. Mighty Mouse 327 is now a monthly supporter. So we on Rumble. So we just wanted to say thank you and announce your presence into the gang. So thank you.
Thank you.
And JP Power gives us $5. Love you guys. Thanks for all the hard work. Boom. Well, thank you very much. There are a couple comments about my glasses earlier on. Mighty Mouse says Sheila has new glasses. They're not new, but I just never wear them because they also block the blue light because I sit in front of multiple screens and I find them to be quite reflective, but they do protect my brain from the blue light, which I feel like I need given the amount of time I spend in front of screens. Plum Duff 69 says those glasses are huge and luxurious. Yes, I was going for smart serial killer. That was the look that I was going for. So they have like an Ed Kemper vibe, but also academic. I think that's it.
Well, I want to thank Mighty Mouse, even though I've always had a prejudice against comic book characters like Mighty Mouse, Underdog. It's this, Sheila. I could buy into the fact that, you know, a human would be bitten by a radioactive spider and get superpowers. I could never cross the Rubicon of an animal like a mouse or a dog getting superpowers.
Oh my God. David Menzies, that reminds me of something.
Okay.
I'm not sure how true this is, but I noticed I was reading over the weekend, I was trying to catch up on the entire internet because I had been very busy and under the weather. And apparently the dogs of Chernobyl are undergoing rapid evolution. I don't know what that means. I don't know if we should be scared. I don't know what that means for the werewolf population of the world, if they've got new competitors. But yes, so speaking of radiation and animals, apparently the abandoned dogs generations down the road are experiencing rapid evolution.
Oh, I hope in a good
Chernobyl.
way. Because, you know, Sheila, I've always said this is why I love the comic book world. I mean, the idea of somebody getting bitten by a radioactive arachnid and getting spider powers and all kinds of super powers and strength, when I just know if I was bitten by a radioactive spider, I'd probably get cancer and die a horrible short death. So that's kind of like...
Yeah, I would just get leukemia and an extra leg.
Yeah. I'm leukemia, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my goodness. Well, Sheila, thank you for coming into the studio. I know you're under the weather, but you're a trooper as always. And thank you to everybody that tuned in and those who gave a donation via our super chats. I believe tomorrow is Tuesday. That means it's Sheila Gunn Reid and Lise in Saskatchewan.
Yes.
That's always a fun ride. I'll be back with Sheila on Friday for the live stream then. In the meantime, as always, folks, stay safe and stay sane.
Canada can work towards a new international set of partnerships that are more secure, prosperous, just, and free. We can pursue deeper alliances with stable democracies who share our interests, values, principles, and history. And we can help create a new era of integration between like-minded partners that maximizes mutual support over mutual dependency. A new system of cooperation that promotes greater resilience rather than merely a quest for greater efficiency. With the fall of the Berlin Wall, the United States became the global hegemon. Its gravitational pull on Canada, always strong, became virtually irresistible and made the US our closest ally and dominant trading partner. But now, the United States is beginning to monetize its hegemony, charging for access to its markets and reducing its relative contribution to our collective security. In parallel, the world's trade routes, allegiances, energy systems, and even intelligence itself are being rewired. Rising great powers are now in strategic competition with America.